Hello, I'm Chris. This is Reality Shadow Band. The portal is still open. I can't seem to close it. It's from Alibaba. If anybody has any tips on how to close portals, really would be liking to hear about that. Anyway, enough of that goofiness. Today we're going to be discussing or showing about climate agenda Grifted-Consensus-Science, the science that is giving consensus via grifting. Yeah, so this is going to be Tucker Carlson, and he's going to be interviewing this kind of scientist I like. Someone that goes against the grain with all this baloney and backs up with numbers. I've had enough time to look at all this stuff that this climate change thing is not what it seems.
In the United States, we often refer to our main sources of energy as fossil.
Fair use, by the way. We're on Tucker Carlson's channel. Give him a subscribe and like. He's waking up, which is cool. He needs to get a little more black pilled about all this stuff because, yeah, it's coming down the pike.
Fuels, oil, natural gas, coal, they're fossil fuels because they come from fossils, ancient organic material, forests, jungles, plankton, dinosaurs. Held under the ground for millennia, they transform into oil, gas, and coal.
Well, that's one theory. They don't really actually know where this stuff comes from. The Russians, of course, have the adiabatic, where it's just the Earth's mantle produces this stuff as from all the stuff that's inside it. We only go down. Well, you're going to know about 5 minutes about some things that the average person doesn't know about oil.
Everybody thinks that's true. On the other hand, there's evidence that maybe it's not the whole story. If that's where fossil fuels come from, if that's how hydrocarbons are made, then how come they're found so deep under the oceans and at the top of the Earth? How come one of Saturn's moons, according to scientists, has more oil and natural gas than Earth? Were there dinosaurs and planktons and forests at one point on one of Saturn's moons? Probably not. So if all hydrocarbons aren't from fossils, where are they from? And why isn't this commonly known? And what are the implications of it? And what does it tell us about our modern climate change policy?
Yeah, we've heard a lot of stuff. Like, so when I was a kid, they were making a major hoopla about the coming ice age, which we probably are in an ice age actually right now. Or coming out of one, maybe. Maybe that's what's going on. Some things like, they made a big deal about the ice age, and then they had the global warming thing. They flipped it. So I saw them flip it in my lifetime. And they flipped it again, but this time they flipped it so they can keep flipping it. And no matter which way it goes, it's always the same thing. It's change, right? So another thing they don't talk about is how all the planets are in the solar system, according to NASA, are heating up at the same amount, the same rate. So maybe this is a solar activity. They never talk about that, though.
These are not just esoteric questions, they're central questions, actually, as we chart the future of energy usage in the world. Willie Soon has been thinking about this for a long time. He's an astrophysicist, a geoscientist. He spent 31 years at Harvard. He recently left, and he joins us here. Dr. Soon, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tucker. It's a blessing to be able to come on your show.
Well, it's a blessing to have you. And this is such an interesting question with so many implications.
Yes.
And I want to spend most of our time talking about the implications. But just to the strict question of where hydrocarbons come from, it sounds like they're not necessarily all from ancient forests or plankton or dinosaurs, are they?
Yes. The story can be a bit long, so give me a few minutes to
Yes.
explain. You are certainly right, but most important to clarify is that the information that is found on the largest moon on Saturn, which is called Titan,
Yes.
is actually results from NASA, European Space Agency,
Yes.
and then the Italian Space Agency, who built this spacecraft called Cassini and Huygens. Actually, one of my thesis advisor committee is actually built a UV spectrometer, but the one that they used to discover this, basically the ocean liquid form of methane, which is in ethane form, which is much more complicated hydrocarbon, is whole ocean of it. Because Titan is in such a way that it's very cold, by the way, so it's -2.
So he's talking about frozen hydrocarbons on another planet. So either that planet got fossils on it, some living matter somehow, some fossilization, or making this oil thing from living matter, or maybe there's something else in the universe that's on these planets that's creating hydrocarbons in that amount. No?
290 degrees
Not a possibility? No?
Fahrenheit.
Yes.
Hint. Where's the global warming there, right? If it's full of methane there, right? That's another problem because it's far away from the sun. That's what it is.
Yes.
And clearly that the question of abiogenic method, which means no need of any biology, is true. Because we know, actually one experiment was done in 2009. It was done in Swedish Royal Academy, one of those group, but it's done by one Russian leader. He was able to show that if you squeeze methane, CH4 in chemical formula, so 4 hydrogen, 1 carbon, squeeze them in a form that in which they simulate the condition of the Earth mantle, which is 1,800 miles deep, kind of below the surface, because the Earth is deeper, right? And it's within this 18, but basically the condition that is only about 40 to 150 miles in, that you actually can form complex hydrocarbon. You got benzene, you got ethane, you got all this other stuff forming. So that proved beyond doubt that you have such a way to make this. Plus that Titan proved beyond doubt.
Okay, so now you know the secret. Oil comes from the earth, from these natural things. We are never going to run out of this oil stuff. Now, having it pollute the environment and in the air, okay, yes, that might be a problem. The pollution part of it, not the chemical part of it, but the pollution part of it seems to be causing problems. And that's the thing that they don't really want to talk about, is that these chemicals in our environment are probably not good for us as humans. So that's probably what the thing they're trying to avoid.
Actually see methane also in all the atmosphere of Jupiter. You even find benzene in the rocks of Mars. And then for me, astrophysicist, I can tell you even more. You find this complex hydrocarbon called polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon. It's another one of those complex hydrocarbon that actually you found it in interstellar space, within stars, intergalactic space. These are everywhere.
It's everywhere. These chemicals are everywhere in interstellar space. How did it get there if it's stemmed from the dinosaurs?
Because temperature there are cold and probably the right pressure condition, all this complex hydrocarbons.
Well, it's kind of incredible because all of us, including myself until very recently, assumed that all of our main energy sources are these so-called fossil fuels. And of course, their existence is going to be limited by the amount of fossils, by the amount of decaying organic material.
Not so.
So if that's not so, then we need to rethink a lot of things.
A lot.
You think?
I think this one fit into a paradigm, a famous...
I really want to thank Tonker for putting this guy on, because it's courageous. This is going against... You basically, the oil cartel has set up diamonds? What was the diamond company? You know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to say the name, but you know the company. That cartel thing where they make it seem like there's not a lot of diamonds, but there's actually a fucking shit ton of diamonds. Well, guess what?
Economist that I like very much. His name is Simon. Do you know about this guy named Simon? Julian Simon, yeah, the key guy, University of Illinois and then Maryland. He was the guy who said that the ultimate resource of humanity or Earth is actually not all this material thing like uranium, gold. Because uranium, there are far more uranium in the oceans than on the land, right? You have 4.5 billion.
I didn't know this. I didn't know that there was more uranium in the ocean than the land. I did not know. Did you know this?
Uranium, gold. Because uranium, there are far more uranium in the oceans than on the land, right? You have 4.5 billion tons of uranium in the ocean. You have only 17 million tons of it. Gold.
4.5 billion versus 17 million? You say 17 million?
4.5 billion tons of uranium in the ocean. You have only 17 million tons of it. Gold. Copper. What do you want on the ocean? It's all there except they're in very dilute form.
Yes.
Clearly. So the ultimate resource actually is not that, it's the human mind. It's the innovation part of it. I think I like the principle a lot. And it fits very well in terms of saying that it's all matter of cost. Even oil.
That's why I know this guy's on the right track, because that is actually what will do it. The problem is we live in this world that's grifting off this mislabel of where this oil comes from, and they're controlling the planet with it. And I hope we wake up in time that we can still maybe, okay, for you, the key word is escape. You either go to the countryside, get out of the tech tent cities that are coming, use the FEIE, foreign earned income exclusion, that comes from the IRS that allows you to live outside the United States for more than 330 days in a year. And you don't have to pay federal income tax if you're a state tax resident that doesn't have. If you're a state resident that doesn't have income tax in that state, you also don't pay tax, so you can pay zero tax. You still have to pay other tax stuff, Social Security and Medicare, but you don't pay those.
So I don't know if any of you know, the audience know that 50 to 60% of all the oil that you already drilled, the drill hole, you can only pull out 40 to 50% of it. 60% of that remains in it simply because there's not enough pressure to get it out. This is why the idea of abiogenic oil is interesting. It's true, clearly true. It's all matter of cost, really. Because this thing has to form way inside the Earth, the mantle, which is 50 to 100 miles, right? Human, how deep have we ever drilled? only the skin, which is only 5 miles maximum, 5 to 6 miles basically. That's
Did you know we only go about 5 or 6 miles into the surface max? And there's like a whole ton of other material, this stuff all throughout the core.
at most that we can do. And then all this stuff had to permeate into the reservoir. I got this information from the top people that physically have to look for oil every day. One of my friends, Joseph Limecooler from Beacon Energy, offshore energy. Those are the guys who work day in and day out to bring us the energy, actually, the oil that we need.
So it's not chumps. So this is just like conspiracy theory. This guy's hardcore science, man. Like, we have been so lied to. Think about it. Have you ever heard of any of these ideas? No? Not even? No?
So why don't most people know this? Why do most people think that the gasoline in their car was by definition
Have to be limited, yeah.
that there's just a tiny amount and it's going away. We'll never
Oh,
find
the
more.
world is full of untruth and half-truths, right? That's the whole problem, right? That's why for so long, even
Yeah. The truth and half truth. The age of mislabel, grift, and cope. We in it. We in the age of scam, man. We in it.
the idea that we're not limited and bounded by availability of, let's say, gasoline, petroleum, or coal. Coal now they won't allow us to use, right? As you know, in COP meeting in Dubai that just ended a day ago, they just physically declared themselves that we should stop using fossil fuel. Basically, petroleum, natural gas, and even coal. I mean, these people are insane now, really insane. I think they're going to harm more people with their own delusion. Plus, I always remember, these are people who actually don't represent the majority.
No.
Since when are this put up to vote? It's always about this minority, the tyranny of the few, always robbing the whole census, the good census of the good people. This is part of the reason why, as a scientist, I also speak out. Not afraid of anything except for just telling the truth. And I'm glad to have this opportunity to say such thing in your show.
So, yeah, we're lucky.
I mean, if
Yeah, we're lucky to have people like him because there's so many people inside that society that are grifting so hard, and we know who they all are. So we'll have track of this afterwards if we can cut some justice on this. But honestly, really, the solution is go fuck out of the way. Get out of the way. Where people aren't going to be doing this stuff they don't care. It's like, whatever, dude. They're already post-collapse. Going through the collapse seems to be the problem. After the collapse is kind of through, then you can come back and try and rebuild, whatever, figure out what's going on. But right now, you want to get out of the way of this thing.
we haven't been told the truth about where hydrocarbons come from,
Right.
and we haven't. I mean, I've never met a single person in my life who said, wait a second, they're not all fossil fuels. Then
See, that's crazy because I've been hearing about that since the mid-90s. So that's what tells me that Tucker is on this awakening thing, or waking up, or seeing what's going on behind the scenes, even though he was living in this stuff. There's so many scam artists and grifters running DC, and they're just so talented at it. I could see them getting away with it. I've always been an outsider. I've always asked questions. I've always looked at the edges. I knew about this adiabatic type of oil generation back in the 90s. And I don't even fucking care about the oil industry. I'm a fucking tech nerd, computer software guy.
we keep hearing there's a scientific consensus on climate change. Every scientist believes the same thing about it, believes Al Gore and John Kerry. Maybe that's not true either?
Yeah, that's all Grift. He knows that. That's cute.
Oh, that I can tell you, please. Thank you for asking that question, Tucker. I've been working on this subject of CO2 causing climate change, or what other factors we can ask that cause climate to change, for close to since my postdoctoral year, 1991, right? So it's about 32 years. And on this question, I think we have a very definitive answer. What we know now is CO2 ain't gonna cause nothing. It's not gonna change much of
CO2 ain't gonna cause nothing.
the climatic system, which means it won't change the speed of the hurricane. It won't change how fast or how frequent tornado form. It won't even actually make any difference to the polar bear population. It's all conservation issue, right? On polar bear, it won't even cause how much fish you don't catch or catch. It won't even cause what they call ocean acidification. It won't even cause this problem that they claim. It's all artificial. Everything they do, it's all dream from their model and the tyranny of the few again.
The model and the theory of the few.
That those few people just dream up this scary story that it just ain't true.
The sales pitch. The mislabel. So they can grift on it. Hello? Anyone? No? Oh, okay.
And then when you come down to the most responsible group for this kind of bad stuff, I was reminded by my colleague, Dr. Ronan Connolly and Michael Connolly, my two co-workers with me on my group, is to say that since I work so carefully and I have about more than 100 scientists the last 3 years alone working with me, so I don't speak on behalf of them, I speak on behalf of myself. My view is that the UNIPCC, United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, is one of the primary problems, which means they have been misleading people. They've been using authority of science, which is not true, right? It's all governmental hackers, basically, right? People like John Kerry, who I guess can barely take a
Governmental hackers. These aren't scientists running all this stuff. This guy, I don't know about you, but does he look a little like... He wants to get rid of you, man.
Proper physics class who keep claiming that greenhouse effect is so simple, right? And then he refused to explain how does it work, right? I mean, he did all of that. That is very terrible. That really,
yeah, they're pretty sloppy. They're really sloppy. They're really sloppy. They're awesome salespeople. These grift and hardcore scam artists are hardcore salespeople, and the best of the best become politicians. Know that.
embarrassing to America. He did that in Bali in Indonesia several years back. That is just so embarrassing.
Do you think he can explain how it works?
No, I don't think so. Even Al Gore, who claimed to know something about science, I challenge Al Gore. I did some of that in his
He invented the internet, by the way.
face, actually. I was lucky enough to be in one of those Wall Street Journal eco conference, and I was giving, setting up with all the UC Santa Barbara students. Please make sure when the question comes up, give me the mic. Well, I was making friends with them the night before. I explained now my details of my work. So I got the mic and asked questions about Al Gore, because one of the primary sad things that they refuse to recognize, that I know you know that in even grade school sciences, CO2 is a gas of life. When you have more CO2, the plant kingdom, the whole ecology, even the oceans.
I'm surprised people argue with me about this. When you want to get your plants to go green, even more flush, whatever, I mean, this is a weed grower's thing, and also just anybody who wants hydroponics, you hook up tank up, which you have to pay for, of CO2, you pump it in the thing and you make your grass grow. And all those things are you go into a greenhouse that's like that, you don't smell CO2. It smells amazing there because there's so much oxygen being pumped out of those plants.
Gonna have more, basically, ability, more fishes, more everything. More life, essentially. That's why it's called gas of
That's why it's self-correcting. That's why it's only 0.02% of the atmosphere.
life. And these people want to demonize it as some gas that can cause global warming, can cause hurricane to run faster or weaker. I don't know what they want. To have more rain, more droughts, and all this other nonsense that they claim. All of that, it just ain't so. That's the problem. By the way, this is how serious I am. I check everything they say. I check. As a scientist, you cannot just dismiss them. You cannot laugh at them. You cannot, chide them. You cannot just make joke of them. You check everything. So as a very serious scientist, and I publish scientific paper refuting all of this argument. Scientific papers maybe mean nothing to the average people, but it's really important. It's like a document that you have to document and then put out the proper scientific arguments about what is right, what is wrong. So that's what we have been doing at my particular center called series-science.com. So
yeah, so you can go, what did he say? Let's go back and listen.
It's about what is right, what is wrong. So that's what we have been doing at my particular center called series-science.com.
series-sign.com. So you can go listen to the rest of this over there at Tucker's channel. Give him a like and subscribe. This is awesome. Like, to get this information out. There's a lot more data like this, but to have it such a concisely put by a scientist who actually did the research himself, that's badass, man. This guy's a baller and a half. Anyways, reality shadow ban. This is part example 12 of the climate agenda, Grifted-Consensus-Science, and we're going to continue grinding on this series and exposing all these retards.